For almost 5 years, Marvel was building an entire villain arc around a completely different character. Kang the Conqueror. Multiple movies. Multiple show appearances. An entire phase of the Multiverse Saga was literally named after him. Then, without a single line of dialogue explaining why, Marvel Studios quietly buried that plan and rebuilt the ending of this whole saga around a man they didn't even legally own until 7 years ago. And that man is Dr. Doom. And the real question isn't whether Doom is a compelling villain. Obviously he is. The real question is why Marvel needed him specifically, right now, badly enough to throw away years of setup and hand their next 2 Avengers movies to a character built out of pure last-minute necessity. Once you actually dig into it, replacing Kang with Doom wasn't really a swap. It was Marvel solving 4 separate problems at once with one character, and almost nobody's talking about the real reason why. Start with the official explanation, because it's more revealing than it sounds. Kevin Feige has said Marvel began pivoting away from Kang before Jonathan Majors' legal troubles ever became public, admitting the studio had quietly realized Kang, quote, wasn't big enough, close quote, to follow Thanos. That's a strange thing to say about a villain with infinite variance across infinite timelines, but it makes sense once you remember what Kang actually was on screen, a time-traveling conqueror who got beaten by a handful of ex-cons in a parking lot in Quantumania. He needed years of careful build-up to feel dangerous. Marvel didn't have years left to spend. The Jonathan Majors situation obviously accelerated things. After his conviction on assault and harassment charges at the end of 2023, Marvel dropped him almost immediately, and the character built to anchor Avengers, the Kang Dynasty, went with him. But Feige has been fairly consistent that the creative pivot away from Kang was already underway before that verdict, which means the Majors fallout wasn't really the cause of the change. It was the excuse to finally make a decision Marvel had already been circling. Doom doesn't have that problem. In the comics, he already crossed the finish line Marvel is racing toward. In 2015's Secret Wars, the entire multiverse collapses into nothing, every reality destroyed except for one patchwork planet called Battleworld, stitched together out of the surviving fragments of dead universes. And the being who survives that apocalypse and rebuilds reality from the wreckage isn't a hero. It's Doom. He crowns himself God Emperor, rules Battleworld absolutely, and does it by taking on power on a scale no other Marvel villain, including Thanos, has ever actually held in the comics. He doesn't need 10 years of setup to justify being the multiverse's ultimate threat, because on the page, he's already done it. Marvel isn't building him up to that scale. They're catching up to a scale the comics gave him over a decade ago. That's the first real reason. Doom is the only villain in Marvel's library who arrives pre-loaded with Thanos-level stakes, no origin story required. But scale alone doesn't explain the timing, because here's the part almost nobody brings up. Marvel Studios could not have legally used Dr. Doom as a movie villain for most of the MCU's existence. Not creatively couldn't. Legally couldn't. Doom belongs to the Fantastic Four's corner of Marvel Comics, and those film rights sat with 20th Century Fox from 1994 all the way until Disney's acquisition closed in 2019. For the entire Infinity Saga, while Thanos was collecting stones, the single most iconic villain in Marvel Comics was sitting in a filing cabinet at a rival studio, completely unusable. Feige has confirmed this directly, saying the plan to use Doom only became possible, quote, because of the Fox acquisition, close quote. Read that again. Marvel's own boss is telling you the multiverse's final villain wasn't chosen first and explained later. He was simply unavailable until a corporate merger made him available, and Marvel had been waiting for exactly that moment. Catching a detail like that, buried inside a corporate merger nobody thought was interesting, is honestly the whole reason this channel exists. So if that's the kind of thing you're into, you're already in the right place. Because rights access explains why Doom could finally show up. It doesn't explain why Marvel needed him to. And that's where Secret Wars becomes the real answer. Before 2019, Marvel Studios owned the Avengers. Fox owned the X-Men. Fox also owned the Fantastic Four. 3 separate franchises, 3 separate universes, no legal way to put them in the same movie. The Disney-Fox deal didn't just hand back one villain. It quietly solved a decades-long puzzle. How do you merge 3 franchises that were built completely apart from each other into one coherent story without it feeling like a corporate stunt? Doom is the answer, because in the comics, he's already the connective tissue. His entire identity is built on being Reed Richards' rival, which ties him directly to the Fantastic Four. His signature storyline, Secret Wars, is the one Marvel event built specifically to justify smashing every corner of the publishing universe together, mutants included, into a single battle world ruled by Doom himself. Nobody else in Marvel's rulebook has a story built for exactly this job. Not Thanos, not Kang. Doom is the only character whose comic mythology was already engineered to fuse Avengers, X-Men, and Fantastic Four into one collapsing, rebuilding reality. That's not coincidence. That's Marvel finally being able to tell the one story it's been structurally incapable of telling for 18 years, the moment it got the rights to do it. And that context changes how you watch the Fantastic Four First Steps' ending completely. Doom appears in the credits scene, fixated on baby Franklin Richards, Reed and Sue's son. A character whose comic powers can reshape reality itself. On its own, that plays like a menacing tease, but line it up against Secret Wars, where Doom takes on Franklin as a kind of adopted son while ruling over Battleworld with Sue Storm at his side, and it stops being a random creepy beat. It's Marvel adapting the actual emotional center of the comic, years ahead of schedule, planting it quietly in a post-credits scene most audiences treated as a jump scare. There's still real debate over exactly which version of Doom that was. Whether it's a variant tied to the Fantastic Four's own Earth, since that film takes place on a different reality than the main timeline, or the same Doom audiences will meet in Doomsday. Marvel hasn't confirmed it either way. But the thematic through line, Doom and Franklin, is consistent enough across both the comics and the marketing that it's clearly deliberate, not incidental. The footage Marvel has actually released backs this up. In the trailer, Downey's Doom tells the assembled heroes they've all lived, quote, stolen lives, close quote, a line that only makes sense if you understand what he's accusing them of. Every hero standing in that room has benefited, at some point, from a multiverse the Avengers themselves helped destabilize. Through Loki's timeline branch, through Strange's spell in No Way Home, through the very existence of variants running loose across realities that were never supposed to touch. Doom isn't just attacking them. He's presenting himself as the only one who ever paid the price for it, which lines up directly with the grief-driven, tragic framing the marketing keeps hinting at around whatever he actually lost. Whether that loss connects back to an incursion the Avengers indirectly caused is still theory rather than confirmed fact, but it's a theory the footage itself seems to be inviting. So Doom solves the scale problem Kang couldn't. He solves the rights problem no other villain could, because he wasn't available until now. And he solves the structural problem of fusing 3 separate franchises, because his own comic mythology was purpose-built to do exactly that. Which leaves one more question. Why not introduce Doom as a brand new character, the way Marvel did with basically every other villain? Why hand the role to the actor most associated with the hero he's replacing? Because that casting solves a 4th problem: time. Robert Downey Jr. already carries 15 years of built-in audience trust as a genius who's brilliant, arrogant, and absolutely convinced he's the smartest person in any room. That's not just a coincidence of personality. It's practically Doom's comic book origin already sitting in the actor's public persona. In the source material, Victor Von Doom and Reed Richards are portrayed as intellectual equals, geniuses who diverged entirely based on one trait. Reed admits when he's wrong, and Doom never does. Feige's own explanation for the casting was almost disarmingly simple. Downey played the most iconic hero the studio ever built, so now he gets to play the most iconic villain. It's not stunt casting. It's Marvel skipping years of character introduction by handing the role to an actor the audience already instinctively understands. It also means Marvel gets to sidestep a problem that quietly hurt the Kang plan from the start, introducing a completely unknown actor as the face of the entire Multiverse Saga. Jonathan Majors was genuinely great in Loki, but the character needed years of small-scale episodes and streaming appearances just to earn a fraction of the trust Downey walked in with on day one. Doom doesn't get that same runway. Doomsday needed a villain audiences would take seriously immediately in his very first full scene without a single prior movie to lean on. Casting the actor who anchored the entire Infinity Saga is about as close to a guarantee of that as Marvel could possibly buy. So none of this was really about finding a scary new bad guy. It was about solving four problems that had been piling up since before Endgame even happened. A multiverse villain who needed comic book scale Marvel hadn't earned the rights to yet. A set of newly acquired franchises with no shared story to justify combining them, and a returning A-list actor Marvel didn't want to waste on anything small. Doctor Doom is the one character who happened to check every single box at once. That's the real reason Marvel needs him right now. Not because he's powerful, plenty of villains are powerful, because he's the only piece Marvel owns that was already engineered decades ago in a comic book to be exactly the bridge this exact moment in the MCU requires. Whatever happens when Avengers Doomsday actually hits theaters this December, that's the story underneath the story. And once you see it, you can't really watch that trailer the same way again. So if you've got your own theory about where all this actually lands in Secret Wars, drop it below, because some of the best ones tend to show up in the comments before Marvel ever confirms a thing.